Howdy Beans, I just want to do a quick update before this episode begins. As I was going through editing and going through all the other episodes that I pre-planned and got pre-programmed for the weeks ahead, I realised that this is the 64th episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast, meaning that next week is going to be my 65th. So I thought, well, 65, it's a big number, big celebration. So I just wanted to let you all know that next week I'll be doing a big sort of special sort of episode. I already know what it is. I already know what I'm going to cover. I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to be quite interested in it, considering the topic that I'm going to be talking about. I talked about last year in my first season, and it did quite well. So I won't give any real big spoilers away. The only thing that I would recommend is to go back to season one, and if you haven't already, or if you already have, go back and listen to my Disney's Pinocchio remake episode. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Just want to let you all know that next week, something big and special is going to happen. It's my 65th episode next week. So I hope to see you there. Hope to enjoy it. And without further ado, hope you enjoy this episode. Hi-Fi Rush. See you in the next one.
Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Howdy, folks, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I am Luke, your host. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're good as per usual. Before I get into it, obviously, got to do all the boring stuff. Make sure that you follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod for all updates on things that I'm watching, playing, doing, all that jazz. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. All feedback is great feedback, even if it's negative. So whatever I talk about in today's episode, comment down below. It really does help out a lot. And yeah, so that's all the boring stuff out the way. So today I'm going to be talking about the recently released on Xbox Game Pass Hi-Fi Rush by the people at Tango Gameworks. Well, this game was an interesting one. It really was. And I'll go into more detail when I go into the review. But it's interesting because it's a type of game that is made for Game Pass, in my opinion. One of the benefits and one of the beautiful things behind Game Pass is that it allows you to experiment. Like, all you really pay, if you're lucky, you only pay £1 a month when you first join, and then it's recurring. Unless you buy Ultimate, it's like £10 a month or like around £7. So it's not breaking the bank, especially how expensive games are nowadays, when most big games are like 60 to 70 quid. Game Pass, I've always said ever since it came out, is a steal. It's a deal. It's a bargain. It's one of the best things in gaming to happen in a very, very, very long time. Especially coming, I'm not saying Xbox, were expensive, but especially coming from Xbox, it's really, really good. Especially how they were behind in the gaming market for such a long time because of how bad the Xbox One performed when it came out. But that being said, the Game Pass, like I said, it's a bargain. And what I love about it, it just gives you the opportunity to try games that you'd never give a go. There are many games on Game Pass that I would have never bothered with. I never would have spent money on. For example, like Deathloop. I always said with Deathloop, well, when it came out for the PlayStation, that I wouldn't play this game unless it was free. And eventually it came to Game Pass, and I gave it a go. And I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy myself. But I didn't feel like, I didn't regret it. I didn't feel bad because it was like, well, I didn't pay nothing for it. You know what I mean? Like, it was free. I got to play it, give it a go. Wasn't my cup of tea, but that's fine. I hold my hands up and say it wasn't for me, and I can walk away. Again, that's fine. It's the same with, for example, like recently I reviewed James Bond's GoldenEye. I haven't played it. It came out in '97, the year before I was born. I never had a Nintendo 64. I've always heard about the legends of how good that game was. And finally, because of Game Pass, I was given the opportunity to give it a go day one. And I enjoyed myself. And if you listen to that review, you know how much I enjoyed myself with that game. And that's the point. And that's the beauty part of Game Pass. It just allows you to experiment. It allows you to try games that you never thought you'd ever give a go. And for the most part, since I've had Game Pass since almost day one, I didn't jump on straight away. I jumped on a year later. But even so, I've played a lot of games that I thought were great and I thought were fantastic, and I was blown away. And then there were games that I played where I was like, oh, this is crap. You know what I mean? But again, I haven't lost anything. I haven't lost any money. And the reason I mention this is because, like I said, it allows games like Hi-Fi Rush to be released day one without much marketing and just say it's on Game Pass now, try it out. You know, so there are a lot of games on Game Pass that probably would fail if they weren't on Game Pass. They wouldn't have as many eyes. People wouldn't know about them. People wouldn't bother giving them a go because they don't want to part with the coin. Which again, I completely understand because I'm the same. You know, if a game doesn't tickle my pickle, doesn't take my fancy straight away, then I'm not going to part with the coin. But if it's free on Game Pass, I'll give it a go because all I got to do is install it and try it. You know what I mean? And what it reminds me of, it reminds me of the old days of demos. I've spoken it before. I miss demo discs. I miss going out, buying the Xbox or PlayStation magazines, getting the demo discs, putting them into my console, and just playing all the latest games. And be like, oh, I like that one. I'll write that down. I'll buy that one. You know what I mean? Or that game looked good, but it wasn't for me. And I miss the old days of demos, and that's how I see Game Pass. I see Game Pass as a beta test sort of demo, being able to try the game before you buy it, because it does give you the option, like if you like this game, you can buy it, and you can actually buy it a bit cheaper than you would because you've got Game Pass, which again is also a bargain. You know what I mean? Now coming back to Hi-Fi Rush, as I mentioned, Hi-Fi Rush was recently released. I think at the end of January. As I mentioned, it was released by Tango Gameworks. They're mostly known for the Evil Within series, Evil Within 1, which I played, scared the crap out of me and never completed, if I'm being honest. Evil Within 2, I enjoyed it a lot more than Evil Within 1. Still haven't completed that one, but I will go back to Evil Within 2 because I feel like that game was more action and less horror. And I like a good balance between action and horror. I don't like pure horror. You know what I mean? Like I love horror. It's weird. I love horror movies, and I can watch horror movies on my own in the dark. That's fine. But there's a difference between watching a horror film and playing a horror game. That just gets my heart going a lot more. So I tend to stay away from the pure sort of horror. I still haven't completed Resident Evil 7 because I just can't get over I feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack. You know what I mean? That game was terrifying. But I will get back to the Evil Within eventually. But they also made Ghostwire Tokyo, which I don't think is on the Xbox yet. I'm not sure, unless it's coming this year. So that's what they're mostly known for horror games. They're mostly known for supernatural sort of games. So it was a kind of out of left field for them to come out with a game like Hi-Fi Rush. By the legendary, and I feel like I'm going to butcher his name, and I do apologize if I butcher his name, Shinji Mikami. No, actually, I think I got that spot on. He's actually also announced recently that he's leaving. But Bethesda released a statement saying, we can confirm that Shinji Mikami has decided to leave Tango Gameworks in the coming months. We thank him for his work as a creative leader and supportive mentor to young developers on the Evil Within franchise, Ghostwire Tokyo, and of course the new Hi-Fi Rush. We wish Mikami-san well in the future and are excited by what lies ahead for the talented developers at Tango. Like I said, he's been at Tango Gameworks for 12 years. He's been in the business for 35 years. He's worked on the likes of Resident Evil and stuff like that. So this guy is, a legendary sort of game designer. So this is kind of his last swan song, the last game that he's released. So yeah, so that's up for me. That's the introduction. Time to get into the review. And I'm going to try my best to, in this review, what you'll notice is that what I mentioned at the beginning about the benefits of Game Pass is one of the benefits of this game. And as I go through my review, you will understand what I mean by that, the positives and the negatives. But I'll round it up at the end when we get to the overall thoughts. But for now, let's get into the review, shall we? Right, so here we are at the review. So as I mentioned, this game was a surprise drop. And this is one of the benefits of Game Pass is that before Game Pass you had to do a lot of marketing for games, and marketing is very, very expensive. So to kind of take away from the budget, you only have to do a little bit of marketing and be like, it's going to be released on Game Pass, and people are going to see it's released on Game Pass and give it a go. And again, we're seeing this happen for a lot of games that would virtually probably go under the radar, not be seen, not be given the light of day, can be released day one on Game Pass, and people will play it because it's technically free. And all you got to do is pay for entry, and once you're there, you've got access to 100 plus games. Um, so as I mentioned, surprise drop. This game has done really, really well in ratings, and people have liked it. And again, I love a surprise drop. Even if it's a game that I don't feel like it's for me, I'd still give it a go because, again, like I mentioned, the benefits of Game Pass. You know, um, this game is gorgeous. It is absolutely gorgeous. I love the concept. It's interesting. The whole idea that you play as a character called Chai, and that you're in this world where this whole company called the Vandalin has kind of not taken over, but kind of run things. It's a very sort of technical sort of world, and that Chai, like many others, has been sort of condemned to the belief in the idea that if you join the Vandalin company, that your life will be changed. That Chai wants to be a rock star, so he joins the company and basically says to them that they can do whatever they want as a test sort of subject. So Chai comes in, he goes through his operation to get rid of his broken arm. They give him a robotic arm, but in the meantime, while they're doing that, his iPod, somebody picks up his iPod and just throws it, and it sort of travels its way down to him, gets stuck on his chest. He gets sort of has his surgery, shall we say, with this big massive like squashing machine, squashes him, and it implements the MP3 player, his little iPod, into his chest, and he's got himself a robot arm, and now he can feel the beat of the world, like the music of the world, the feel of the world. Everything's got a beat, everything's got a tune, and that's why I did the interlude was a beat. So you get it. But the idea is quite interesting. Like, it's a rhythm-based action game. It's quite interesting concept. It's interesting graphics. The game's gorgeous. It's everything's like in a very sort of anime sort of style. I love it. I love these sort of games. It reminded me of Jet Set Radio and Sunset Overdrive, because I'm a big fan of Jet Set Radio. I love it. I played that game on the Dreamcast, and I played it on the original Xbox. I love that game to bits. I've always wanted to go back and play it, and I've been trying to find a copy of it, but it's incredibly expensive. It is backwards compatible on the Xbox One, but you have to own it on the Xbox 360. So yeah, there's a way around it, but I'm trying to figure out how to do that. But one day I'd like to get back to play that game. I miss the old days of the Dreamcast, to be honest. But also Sunset Overdrive. That was one of the what's the word it's called, sort of first releases with the Xbox One. And actually, my first Xbox One was a white Xbox One, and it was the Sunset Overdrive edition. And I remember playing that game. It was the first game I played on next gen, and I loved it. I fell in love. The concept, the world. They did a fantastic job. Obsidian did with that game, and I would have loved a sequel. Sadly, I think PlayStation now own Obsidian, and Obsidian does make games now just for PlayStation. But they made Spider-Man and all that, so they're doing all right. But I would have loved to see a Sunset Overdrive 2. I think that is one of the disheartening parts of the Xbox One generation, was that they never made a sequel to Sunset Overdrive. That is a crying shame. But it's neither here nor there. But this game reminds me of Jet Set Radio, and Sunset Overdrive had a love child. This would be that game. It has all the essence of Jet Set Radio. It has the style of Jet Set Radio. Was also the free running and the rhythm based sort of movements of Sunset Overdrive. They come together so well, and it just works. And it's kind of what you'd expect as a next gen version of those games, of that genre. What I mean? So it works perfectly in there. The game starts off interesting, with fun gameplay and characters. I was interested. I was having a good time. I was finding it hard to kind of fight with the beat, because the way the game works is everything goes to the beat. So even the enemies move to the beat. Every time you swing your sword, your guitar, which is not a sword. It's like a guitar sort of melee weapon. You swing to the beat, so you're always moving to the beat. Everything's moving to the beat. The levels, the platforming, all that moves to the beat. And when you're fighting enemies, you can hit them like 3 times, whack, 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 and then there'll be a big one. And if you get it in time to the rhythm, you can do a power move. And eventually, as the game went on, I got more used to that, and I got quite skilled at being able to get it perfect or good. And even when you get around to further in the game, where you can parry objects and you can dodge, everything moves to the rhythm. So it's always the rhythm-based game. And this is where, as I was playing, I was actually thinking to myself, it's a shame the Xbox, unlike PlayStation, it's a shame the Xbox doesn't have haptic feedback, because I feel like this game would benefit having a controller that actually, vibrated, and you had haptic feedback of the levels, so you could feel, the beat in the controller, so you could tell, because it's in your hands, you could tell when you need to swing. And I feel like you'd be able to play the game better if you could feel it. Obviously, sadly, the Xbox doesn't have haptic feedback, but I feel like it would benefit from it. Um, but as I mentioned, the characters are interesting. You play as Chai, you have Peppermint and all the other characters that you meet throughout the game. Really interesting, really fun, I think. But what gets me, and this is where the review will start to get a bit negative, um, is eventually the game got repetitive. It got really repetitive and boring, because once you realize that all the levels are basically act the same, then it kind of gets to the point where you're like, okay, I'm doing the same thing over and over again. As I mentioned, it's like an action platformer. So imagine that you've got a sort of level, and your job is to go from point A to point B. In the way, point A, point B, you have a lot of platforming to do, a lot of jumping sort of puzzles, as well as you'll have a few arenas, right? So the best way I can explain it, I know it's very sort of it'd be best to show you visually, but because it's a podcast, I have to show you audibly. So I'm going to try my best to explain it. So imagine that you'd have a huge line in front of you, and in that level, if you cut it into slices, every two slices is a platformer. So you'd have slice one, slice two, you do a bit of platforming, right? Then you get slice three, would be sort of like a small battle arena, which would show at the beginning of the game would be like a tutorial showing you how to dodge, showing you how to parry, showing you how to sort of call in help while you're in battle through your allies, that sort of thing. Or it would just be a standard sort of battle. So you'll fight an enemy or group of enemies, you defeat them, there'll be a short, sort of funny, sort of silly cutscene, and then you'll have another battle in that arena. So you'll have two battles there. Then, once you finish there, you'll move on to another two sections of platforming, and then you'll have another little battle arena. Same sort of thing will happen there, and then you'd have another two, maybe three slices of platforming, and it's kind of rinse and repeat. Every mission is set like that. You have some platforming, two battles in one area, more platforming, and then another two battles in the same area, and rinse and repeat. And once you realize that, it kind of gets a bit repetitive, and it started to get boring. I started to get bored through it, because the levels just felt like they were getting longer and longer, and I was doing the same thing over and over again, even if the moves were different, even if I was learning new moves or I was getting new allies in. Like, you get Peppermint, who can destroy barriers. You can call her in and she can shoot barriers with her guns. That's interesting. Then you meet another guy, I think his name was Macron or Makarov, not Makarov, I think Macron. He's heavy hitter, so he can destroy shields and he can destroy walls. So you call him in, and again, once you get all the new sort of friends in, then you know that that's a level that I'll just be using that one new ally for that mission. And again, it's just very repetitive, very formulaic, and like I said, I got bored of it. But maybe again, I sit here and I think maybe it's me. Maybe it's because I'm not very good. I don't really have much in the way of rhythm. Um, but it just gets a bit annoying at times, because you get these certain sections where, and it happens in boss battles. It happens, out of boss battles when you're trying to do sort of like, for example. So two examples, right? So the first example is, imagine if you're doing platforming and that you need to kind of raise a bridge to get to another section, right? There'll be like a switch that you have to hit. Now, some of these switches are just press X, X, Y, X, and then make sure you hit it at the perfect time and the door will open, right? They're quite easy, they're all right. Like, I'm pretty good at those ones, right? But then you get ones where it's like a quick time event. So you'll press the button, and then on the top of the screen you'll get XX, and then you have to kind of push like you have like the X button around a giant circle around that, and there'll be a little tiny circle right around the X button, and you have to kind of mash the X button at the exact right time, while also making sure you're paying attention to the one next to it, another X button next to it. So you kind of bash, bash, then it'll be like yellow, yellow, then it'll be like hold down X. You got to hold the X button down all the way here, then let go and exit. It'll be same for B, same for Y, and they get repetitive and it gets boring and it gets tedious. So it's like I'm sitting there thinking because like there's no system in place. Like I failed a lot, and there were times where I was getting frustrated. I generally there's many moments where I basically was like, I don't want to play this game anymore, but I stuck with it. But there was never a moment where like you'd fail 3 times, like usually, and it'd be nice if the game would be like, oh, you failed. Would you like to skip this section? A little bottom of like, would you like to press B to skip? And I would do. Like, yeah, I tried 3 times, I couldn't get it, but I don't want it to block my enjoyment. I don't want it to block my gameplay. I'll skip it and move on. It's okay. That's my choice. But the game doesn't give you that option. There's no option to skip. It's like either solve this puzzle or you're stuck here. You are not going to progress to the next mission. You're not going to progress in the game. There's no way around this. You have to do this puzzle. And so the more times where I sat there and had to rinse and repeat constantly of these. I don't know how I managed to do it, but I managed to complete this game. But I'll get onto that bit in a minute, right? But yeah, there was no skip function, and I just thought this game would benefit from a chance to skip. Like if you didn't get that puzzle right after 2-3 times, the game should be like, would you like to skip this part? It would be nice to be given that option to skip. If you didn't get it perfect, you shouldn't have to try again. It just would be nice to be able to have a skip button, is all. And it's not just that, like you have it with the enemies as well. You have the enemies where like they'll attack you, and it'd be like a showdown sort of style where the camera will like zone in on like you and the enemy, and it'll go very sort of Enter the Dragon, sort of like kung fu sort of movie style, and then it'll come up. It'll have like a beat. It'll be like hit, hit, dodge, hit, 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 like dodge, parry, parry, dodge, parry, parry, parry. Right? And the idea is you've got to press the parry button at the right time, dodge at the right time, parry, parry, parry. And if you miss at least one of them, you've got to do that again. But you're also taking damage at the same time, and you're locked. You can't move out the way. You're stuck in this. You have to get it right, right? So then the boss will move back because you failed, and he'll attack you again in the same rhythm, but you've got to get it right. And there were multiple times where I was doing boss fights where I would get it wrong at least once. And I'd be like, fuck's sake. So then I've got to do it again. And like, it was just, it was so boring and like just unfair. And it was really killing my love for this type of game because I love rhythm-based games. I do love, like I said, Jet Set Radio. I grew up on Jet Set Radio. I love that game. Sunset Overdrive. I loved it, completed it. That series holds quite dear to me. Both of them do, to be honest. Um, but this game, again, this is what I mean about the benefit of Game Pass, is that if I had paid for this game, and this is the sort of things I was getting, these are the sort of things that I was running into, this is the moment where I'd get pissed off, and I'd be like, I've wasted my money. Because I'll be honest, I'm one of these people that does get buyer's remorse. Whenever I buy a game or something, I always get buyer's remorse, even if it's something that I want or something that I need. I still get buyer's remorse. And that's why I'm quite cautious on certain games that I buy. I need to know that I'm going to enjoy them, or that I'm looking forward to them. That way, I don't feel like I've wasted money. You know what I mean? And this would be one of those games that I would have that motion of like, I would have to complete it because I paid money for it. But it'd be very much the fact of I'd feel just like I'd wasted my time and my money, and that it could have been spent on something else. You know what I mean? So that's the sort of feeling I was getting with this game, is that as it got repetitive, as it quite got boring, I just I just started to question what I was doing. But like, surprisingly, as I said, I completed this game, despite not enjoying it, the game getting more repetitive. The only reason that I completed it, and again, you might like, this is like the bane of being a podcaster, really, or the bane of being any sort of reviewer in general, is that the only reason that I bothered to sit and complete this game was because I had so many other game reviews to get out of the way. So I had the King Kong one, which released a couple of weeks ago. Then I had sort of the GoldenEye one, and then I'd also had to sort of do the Black Panther 2 sort of review. So because I had all that in my mind, and I had it written down, and I had to get round to actually finish those games off and finish that film off and doing the reviews, that I didn't have any more space in my brain to play a new game and kind of add that into the bunch. So I just carried on playing Hi-Fi Rush just to kind of waste time. That's what it got to at the point, was just the fact of I've got so many other reviews, I can't get around to playing another game, so I might as well just keep playing this game and to pass the time. And eventually I managed to complete it. And otherwise, if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have completed this game. If you want my honest opinion, I probably would have gone halfway through and gone, it's not for me, and uninstalled it. But again, as I mentioned, it's the benefit of Game Pass. Game Pass allows you to do that. There are many games where I only played like the first mission, and I was like, it's not for me, and uninstall it. And again, it's one of the benefits. It's one of the upsides of Game Pass. There's no money wasted. There's no time wasted. Well, there is a bit of time wasted, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's like the fact of you're not wasting anything. If you didn't like it, fine. If you're an achievement hunter, it's fantastic. But again, this review is not really just to kind of boost up Game Pass. Like, I love Game Pass, but the whole point of this sort of episode is not to boost up Game Pass. But again, the reason I mention it is because a game like Hi-Fi Rush, it works perfectly for this type of game, and for these games, these surprise drops. So my overall thoughts of this game is that it's interesting. It's got a fun concept. It does make me wish we had a Sunset Overdrive sequel, or a Jet Set Radio sequel, or remaster. To us nowadays, I'd just be happy for a next-gen remaster of Jet Set Radio. If they never want to do a sequel, I just love a next-gen sort of sequel to it. And saying that, I'd actually love a sequel to Crazy Taxi. I love Crazy Taxi. I'd love a sequel to that. I never played any I know there are sequels, but I never played any of the sequels to Crazy Taxi. So, I'd love a remaster of Crazy Taxi, and maybe remaster the sequels as well. Well, you know what? But anyway, moving on. Definitely a remaster to Jet Set Radio. I got a bit of sort of nostalgic there, a bit reliving my Dreamcast days. But yeah, remaster for Jet Set Radio or a sequel. Plus, this game has an interesting beginning, but like I said, it does get boring and repetitive as you go on. I can recommend this game if you're a rhythm action game fan. If you like these sort of games, if you like rhythm action games, if you sort of like Jet Set Radio, if you like Sunset Overdrive, this is a game that's worth trying, especially if you've got Game Pass. It's free. Give it a go. Give it a try. But if you don't really have any rhythm and you don't like rhythm-based games, then I can't recommend it to you. Overall, if I had to say install it or uninstall it, I would say, me personally, right, uninstall it. Like, unless you're a fan of these type of games, don't bother. There are other games out there on Game Pass. There are other things to try. Try those first. But if you're interested, again, give it a go. But me personally, if I had to give it a rating between install and uninstall, it would be uninstall. It's not worth it, to be honest. But again, that's my opinion. You can either agree to disagree, but that's how I feel on Hi-Fi Rush. So I'm going to go off to the end now, and I'll see you in a minute. So here we are at the end of the review. I hope you all liked it. I hope you all enjoyed it, as per usual. As I mentioned, like I said, this game wasn't really for me, and the only reason I completed it is because I had, the bane of it being a podcaster, having a lot of things that you need to play and record and watch. There's only so much space in the old noodle for it all, so that's why I completed this game. But like I said, otherwise I wouldn't have done it. But again, that's my opinion. Let me know on Twitter at Nerdstalgic_pod if you agree or disagree. Like, again, if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to give me a comment. Again, if you agree or disagree, or if you like this game, or that you miss the days of Jet Set Radio, Sunset Overdrive, all that jazz. Really, really helpful. Really, really appreciate it. And so you can find the Nerdstalgic podcast on Spotify. You can find it on Anchor. You can find me on Google Podcasts, Amazon Music Podcasts. You can find me on Audible, as I mentioned as well, YouTube. And if you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to give me a star rating, 1 to 5 stars. If you go to my profile on Spotify and you scroll down, there will be a star rating underneath my profile picture. Click on that, and you'll be given the option to rate my podcast from 5 stars to 1 star. 5 stars, best thing you heard in your life. You like me, you miss Jet Set Radio and you want to relive the glory days. 1 star is that you hated Jet Set Radio, you hated the Dreamcast, and to be honest, you think that I have no idea what I'm talking about. Whatever you feel like is fair, 1 to 5 stars, I appreciate it greatly, and your feedback is appreciated as well, not just on Spotify, but on Twitter and YouTube. So any and all feedback that you have, I do appreciate it so much. And yeah, so I've been your host, Luke. You've been listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast. Thank you very much. I do appreciate you, and I will see you all in the next one. All right, Beans. Bye-bye.